Are we ready, Nick?
Okay.
All right. Let me know when we're on. We are on. Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, December 18th, 2023. It's just a bit past 7 o'clock. We're in downtown Hanover. Do good work for the town and have fun. We have a nice little agenda today, hopefully emphasis on little. First, we do have a public hearing, which we'll get to shortly. And the rest of the agenda is there'll be public comment. There'll be a budget and finance update. Then we're going to be setting a couple of public hearings for the 8th for unanticipated funds. We're going to table that motion from the movement of the Advisory Board of Assessors recommendation until January. And there are some appointments which we'll be doing. And then we'll get on to reports. There will be a non-public session later tonight. We have a quorum with the three of us, just to announce that. And we also have Nancy Carter on the telephone. Say hello, Nancy.
Yes, hello, I am here. I am present.
Nick, can you hear that?
Yeah. Can we go any louder?
I can try.
Try it again, please, Nancy. Say hello, please, Nancy.
Nick, can you hear me now? I put myself on speakerphone.
That's better.
That's better, Nancy. And we raised your volume a little bit too. And
Okay.
so, my understanding for the way that we're going to run the public hearing easements part, which regards the easements that we're talking about, Joanna, you're going to recuse?
Yeah, I have to recuse myself for the Dartmouth components, although I could probably do the last one.
Of course. We can do the last one first.
Yeah, because Mr. Steger's here.
And while
so.
you're recusing yourself, we do have Nancy as a voting member. Alex, can you just speak to how we figured that out?
So we did run that by our attorney, and the guidance is that although we do have to have a quorum physically in the space where the meeting is taking place, we can also have additional voting members available electronically.
Thank you, Alex. All right, so I will open a public hearing. Now, this is the third of three, which regarding acquisitions, conveyances, an act enabled by town meeting in May of this year. So this is new for us, and this is our first time we are going through it. This is public hearing 3 of 3 regarding acquisitions and conveyances of real estate in the town pursuant to RSA 4114A for the Select Board to vote on each acquisition conveyance and to authorize the town manager to execute all necessary documents relating to the acquisitions/conveyances. The process is also described in the notice of public hearing and in the town manager's select board reports, which is part of the public record as well. This is, as I started to say, we are required statutorily to have 3 meetings, 2 of which are public hearings, followed by another public hearing at which it is anticipated that a vote would be taken, although that is subject to the board's approval, of course. And so let's open this public hearing. I'm just getting to the list of properties. We've seen these properties several times before. The first one I'm going to open up. So we are not taking an en masse. We are going to we're going to speak to the one on Goodfellow Road first, prior to Joanna recusing herself. And as we talked about, this was an easement placed on the property I learned from Whit Spalding, who did some research into this in 1961, happens to be the year I was born. And so I know how many years ago it was, I didn't have to do the math. And setting up trying to find his email. The intent was of some property owners to set up a green belt around the town of Hanover to just to preserve, as a natural preserve, as a buffer for the foreseen development in the center of town. And we have had our several actions have been done on this. Well, first of all, we've already had 2 public hearings concerning this. And in addition, we did have our town, and I should also mention at the start that the Conservation Commission did vote to uphold to deny the restriction release, the easement release, that is to say. And our council has reviewed this, and I am trying to find that email.
Wait a minute, the Conservation Commission denied the release or accepted the release of
The
easement?
Conservation Commission in this case is an advisory board.
Yep.
And I was present at that meeting,
Yep.
and they did report on that. You may have been absent, I'm sorry. And then I missed you at the next meeting. Yes, the Conservation Commission voted to deny the transfer or the release. I'm trying to come up with the right verbiage. And we did receive a summary from Whit, the chair of that board. It has to do with the basic thought being that the restriction was enumerated in the deed, and it was thought to be important I remember the discussion at the meeting. It was thought to be important at the time, meaning 1961, that the deed was written, which is why it was enacted. There are also several other properties which are probably also encumbered by easements, which may or may not be known to property owners in that area. I am looking for it's in our packet.
There's a town council.
Yeah, there's a town council report. I have it right here. I'm just trying to find it.
I just put it on top of your email.
Oh, thank you. That is very convenient. Thank you. This is quoting Laura Spector Morgan, who was one of our town council. Here, where the town only has enforcement rights and not any other interest in the property, and where, to my knowledge, there was no town approval requiring this restriction, and where I further understand Mr. Phillips has no interest in enforcing the condition of the approval, I do recommend that the select board votes to release their right to enforce the restrictions. So she's recommending that we release restriction. There's absolutely no reason for the town to stand in the way of what is essentially a private issue. If the town did not have the right to enforce the restriction, it would have no input into this decision at all. So I've relayed that information to Whit, who does not necessarily agree. The Conservation Commission has acted, but I've outlined my position that we should, I agree with town council. I think we should release this easement. I've been speaking a lot. Any other thoughts, board?
No, I mean, I move that we go ahead and release the restriction on the property.
I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Kari, would you like to?
So, Kari Asmus, Sawsville Road, off of Hanover Center Road. And I guess, truth in, whatever that saying is, in my effort to try to get more information about, and I don't know, can Nancy hear me? Because
Nancy, can you hear Kari?
Yes, I can, yes.
Right. That in an effort to get more information, I did reach out to Whit Spalding, who's the chair of the Hanover Conservation Commission, to find out more of the reasoning, etc. And then after the first hearing, and I have to say, it was something that he said that really caused me to dig in. And I've looked through the Grafton County online registry of deeds pretty thoroughly for that part of Hanover, and it turns out that there are 8 other parcels that involve more than a couple hundred acres of land. And so I just really want to put a fine point on it, that although you may be releasing a restriction on one parcel,
Yep.
you are setting a precedent for a lot of acreage, and I don't know that that is something that you, before tonight, were really thinking about that you were doing. The other thing that I think Whit was trying to convey was some information about George Bud Wrightson, who started to be active in conservation and in zoning, having petitioned warrant articles for the nature preserve starting in 1961. So he and Bob Norman and Gene Hennessy were really visionaries. And so whereas the attorney for the property owner said that perhaps Bud's language was meant just that whatever the zoning was is what should be enforced. It's pretty clear that Bud had a big vision where, and in the other attorney's letter, it mentioned something about a subdivision, and he didn't do a subdivision. He did an annexation where he had many properties that he bought. He melded them together, and then he made, I think he ended up with fewer parcels than what he started with. So he didn't do a subdivision. So to the extent that the town ever would have thought about putting restrictions on what he did, there was never an opportunity because there was never a subdivision. There was just this annexation. And I have to say that he also was in construction. He had something to do with Mulherron Farms and the size of the lots there, which are kind of big. So he wasn't anti-development, but he had this idea that he did not want those parcels to be any further fragmented. And I was going to say, I do have an email from a former neighbor that I tracked down of his, and it said, Bud told me he had the surveyor design the 3-lot original subdivision with 13-acre lots to allow for 3-acre house site and 10 acres for current use. Wrightson's original intent was to conserve the back portions of the lots. Any new subdivisions would create fragmentation of parcels and adjacent dedicated conservation land. So, you know, because it's not just this one lot, it's a number of lots, and if you drive out there, you sort of say, wow, the landscape here just sort of feels different, and it's because of this decision that Bud Wrightson made back in the day to put this phrase, and again, he was in construction, he was in subdivisions, he was a conservationist, he knew about, I mean, my understanding is that he felt that by putting that language in there, that would stand the test of time. And I guess I wonder whether or not, you know, this board should go back on what was the understanding in the mid, 1980s about how one could create basically a certain conservation ecosystem in a part of town.
Yeah.
Very intentionally.
Okay. I think it was 1960s.
The 1960s was, that part was when he first got involved in zoning, but these deeds are from the mid-1980s, and the plan is from the mid-1980s, and when the attorney says that it appears that the restriction on 33 Goodfellow had to do with another parcel, it actually is because that other parcel was the first one to be sold, and there was a restriction on that. So it was sort of like Bud saying to Phillips, I'm putting a restriction on your property, it's 16 acres, and I'm saying you can't subdivide it at all. But know that the next lot over is also going to have restrictions. So it was a way of him conveying to the first person who bought into this vision that they were going to also have neighbors that were going to have similar restrictions.
Carrie, I completely understand everything you just said. I had a discussion with Whit over that as well. Or, excuse me, we call discussions electronic conversations these days. And I respect all of those decisions that were made by these people. The only one of these, the group that I knew was Bob Norman, and I certainly admired and respected him completely. Just a wonderful gentleman, passed away recently. This just seems to me not to be a town issue. It seems to be the town's responsibility in this was to enforce an easement that it did not seek and had no part in for the last 60 years. Therefore, I don't see a reason to not release the property owner.
Well,
I understand the potential domino effect. I understand how beautiful it is up there on Goodfellow Road. Bike by there frequently, by your house as well. And it is a special area.
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't know that our town attorney was aware of how many other parcels and how many other acres, you know, we were talking about, because when she talked about what interests the town has, you know, I have to say, when I came here on November 27th, I was kind of like, oh geez, I don't know about this one, what's one subdivision? But it really is much bigger than I think our town attorney understood. And, you know, we don't actually know if that was the practice back then. How many bud rights and type of deeds are there throughout the town that potentially could be even bigger than just the ones, around Goodfellow? So I guess what I'm really concerned about here, you know, are the unintended consequences. But I also think that if back in the mid-'80s, it was the case that a person could put that language in their deed, understanding that the town understood that that was an enforceable interest and that the town would enforce it, it seems.
But that never occurred, to my knowledge.
So the language
was put in the deed, but the town's, for lack of a better terminology, buy-in never occurred.
Well, I guess the question would be, we don't really know, because the then town manager isn't here. We don't know what conversations took place. The town, again, the planning board, there wasn't ever any action in front of the planning board that would have allowed the planning board to have put restrictions on it. The question is whether people in the mid-'80s would come to town hall and say, you know, I understand that conservation language is now that if I give the town the enforceable right, you know, on this deed, that the town abides by it. And we don't know, did the then town manager, then director of planning, then planning board say, you know, yeah, you're right, we'll enforce it? Or did they say, yeah, no, we don't really want to do that? Because I was going to say, even in the 25 years that I've been, you know, attending select board meetings, there's been a lot of, there's been a change in the philosophy about easements from, you know, being kind of enthusiastic about them. We have all sorts of little trail easements that go around sides of subdivisions that, you know, were sort of in vogue, and then we became very cautious of easements because we started to learn that as we took on easements, there were these, you know, costs to it, and now it sort of seems like we're moving back towards being friendly towards them. So, you know, we don't really know what was going through, what he was told, but again, he put an awful lot of effort into this, and it seems to me that if he didn't know that it was going to be, you know, carried through in perpetuity, that, you know, that he wouldn't have. So again, I realize this is new information, and I'm sorry I didn't have it, but I couldn't come to, you know, last meeting.
John.
So I guess if the landowner wanted to have an easement in the 1980s that was in perpetuity, there were Upper Valley Land Trust and the Hanover Conservation Council were in existence, and they could have put in a permanent easement on the property, and the Hanover Conservation Council could have encumbered the property, and the landowner didn't. And I don't think it's, I think putting the onus on the town to enforce this seems like an undue hardship for the community, for the town, considering there's.
Again, I mean, we talk about what could have happened or not. I mean, he was on the board of the then Hanover Conservation Council. And I'm sure that if the impression, well, what do I know? But there is the possibility out there that if he thought that that's what was necessary, he was on the board, he could have done that. But for whatever reason, was it because he didn't think it was necessary? Because, I mean, you know, I don't know what the standard advice was back then. But
Current.
you're right, he was on the board, he could have done that.
Yeah, and the fact is he didn't. The landowner didn't even know of this easement, and the town itself does not have interest in enforcing it.
I think that the town does have an interest in planning.
Let me ask Nancy. Nancy, was this taken up by the planning board, Nancy? I can't remember.
No,
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, I guess I am repeating myself, but again, just as I am most concerned, I mean, again, it's two prongs that I think Whit also brought up, you know, honoring the efforts of an early conservationist.
Absolutely.
And that for the past 40 years, these easements have been on all of those parcels, and that until this is the first time in 40 years then that somebody who bought the parcel knowing that it had these restrictions on them now is coming to the town and saying, I want the parcel removed so that I can subdivide, not me, but the owner. So for the first time in 40 years, that's happening, and the question is, prior to tonight, you know, did you know that this is setting a precedent for who knows really how many subdivisions that could change the way the landscape is up there? And then, you know, so precedent and just do we not honor, you know.
I did attend I'm on the Conservation Commission myself, and I did attend the meeting where Whit updated us to that regard last Wednesday. And he also sent a letter to the board this afternoon, or this morning, I'm not sure if everybody got a chance to read it, but it was.
And just truth in advertising, I asked if I could see that because it's a public document.
Yep.
And I did feel that it put I don't know that he mentioned the word precedent.
I think he certainly implied it.
Yes, but so I'm putting a little finer point on.
Yep.
And that we're talking about, you know, up to, you know, more than a couple hundred acres, so it could be big.
Thank you.
I don't see if the owner wants to say anything.
Anybody else want to speak to this issue?
I don't know, would you
Doug,
like
can you come up and
Yeah.
just introduce yourself and speak with the mic? Sorry, there are folks. Believe it or not, we have a rabid TV audience out there.
I'm Doug Stager. We're the owners of 33 Goodfellow. I'm not actually sure what I want to say that's not already in the record in terms of the what our lawyer and the town council has said. One of the restrictions that was on the deed was tied to the original heirs continuing to live in. And that's been released, that part of it. So really, we just want the town to release these enforcement rights. That's the only issue at this point. And I think maybe we should have known, but we didn't know this restriction was on the deed. And certainly we know that the other restrictions which go on any subdivision in that area, which would allow at most one, given our road frontage, at most one subdivision, one other lot, which is what we are planning. So I think are there questions or anything else?
Yeah, so could you just remind us of the acreage, what the division of the acreage is?
It's 13 acres and it's a little over 500 feet of road frontage. So the plan would be to do a 5-acre minor subdivision is what we would have to then come and propose to get approved. But that would fit within the current zoning rules.
Thank you, Doug. Nancy, do you have any thoughts you want to add? We're in the discussion part of this. We have a motion and a second.
No, I guess one of the things that I'm persuaded about is the fact that the original landowner, as you say, did was part of the Conservation Commission and so forth, and so he must have known that there were more substantive and binding ways of encumbering this property, and apparently chose not to use those routes.
Okay, thank you.
Question, real estate question. Those more binding measures would, in theory, impair the value or affect the value or influence the value of the property. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I think that, you know, in reading this, in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, but, you know, essentially what they did is they said, okay, we're subdividing these 8 lots. They're gonna be 13-acre lots, these are 3-acre house lots, no further subdivision allowed, written in the deed.
Right.
But they had to have subdivided, it was before subdivision, 61. The original subdivision, I don't think we had subdivision regulations in 1961.
But I mean, I can.
But, so, you know, in terms of the value is greater now if we release this restriction. I think what has me flummoxed is that the restrictions may be enforced versus shall be enforced by the town of Hanover in the language. And so I think that's kind of, for me, that's a little wiggly in the sense that they're very clear that if the heirs leave, they no longer have enforcement. And instead of saying the town shall enforce the shall, it's may. And so it feels like there's discretion on our part. And so, you know, a 13-acre lot that can't be subdivided has less value in Hanover than a 13-acre lot that can be subdivided.
So it seems on the one hand that the prior seller benefits by having some ambiguity in the language and therefore potentially realizes a higher value.
I'm trying to follow you.
Well, there's a lot of reading here of intent.
Yep.
From a prior owner, and actions not taken by a prior owner, but also perhaps benefits accrued by a prior owner in the sense that it wasn't put into conservation and that was an option. So it's, can you on the one hand realize a higher value but not really do the thing that you want to have intended, and therefore, I mean, that seems like a potential.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Conflict.
Yeah.
If you want to put it in conservation, put it in conservation. If you want something a little ambiguous to create flexibility and potentially value upon sale, well, then you will walk a road that may not be what you
exactly what you intend.
Or say you intended.
Well, we don't know that. None
That's what I'm saying.
None of us were there.
No. Any further discussion? Nancy, you good?
No, and Carrie, the point is, and you don't know the intent, or that person does not know the intent for decades in the future, which is a very long tightrope.
Yeah, that's definitely swaying me as well. Okay, I'd like to call for a vote if everyone's amenable to that. We have a motion to release the easement. All in favor? Aye.
Nancy Carter, yes.
Opposed? And that carries unanimously of the 4 people present. We still have wait, before you go, we still have the Lebanon one, which you want to recuse yourself as well for?
Yeah, because it's
okay, fine, thank you.
So
now
for the record, Joanna Whitcomb is recusing herself from further discussions because I think all the rest, there's some kind of Dartmouth ownership.
Okay, let me get a list of the easements. So,
Put me in an awkward spot there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Alex, so now we're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, well, 9 big bullets, and then there's 3 sub-bullets in one of those. Easements, which is a transfers back and forth between the town of Hanover and Dartmouth. We have talked about these at 2 prior meetings. I'll just list them. There's a camping rink drainage easement acquiring from Dartmouth College, Hanover Inn Porte Cochere, conveying to Dartmouth College, Old Tuck Drive sidewalk easement, conveying to Dartmouth College, the West Wheelock Sewer Pump Station acquiring from Dartmouth College, North College Street sidewalk acquiring from Dartmouth College, that obviously the town is what I'm saying acquiring from, this is the town, North College Street retaining wall conveying to Dartmouth College, and that's from the town, of course. Pine Park pedestrian public access, release of easement from the town of Hanover, removal of enforcement rights restrictive covenants for, we just did that. Transfer of easements to Lebanon, the city of Lebanon, the Indian Ridge easement, approximately 130 acres conveying to the city of Lebanon, the pond easement, approximately 19 acres conveying to the city of Lebanon, 6 trail easements outside the Indian Ridge tract conveying to the city of Lebanon. Thank you for the map, Kara. That's very, very helpful. So, this is our last of the 3 public hearings that we are required to hold on the based on that action at the town meeting back in May. Alex, with respect to,
We're doing this first?
what's that?
We do, there's a request that we do
Yeah.
this first.
1 second. Alex, did you have an update that you wanted us to?
Yeah, so the, after talking to our attorney about the 3 transfers to the city of Lebanon, she would like to take the time to speak with Lebanon's attorney as well and make sure we're moving this through the right process. There's a little confusion or questions around whether these are conservation easements, whether the conservation commissions have the scope or the select board does. So her recommendation or her preference would be to speak to the city of Lebanon attorney and do some more due diligence and then make sure they figure out the sort of right way for us
So
to
Alex,
do it.
if we in essence table that, how does that fit into what we're required to do under the, I forgot the RSA already, I said it earlier.
We would have to restart the process.
Lovely.
So, yeah, the statute is pretty specific that the vote on the issues has to take place no fewer than 7, no more than 14 days or 10 days after.
Understood. And Laura Spector Morgan is advising you that this is important enough to delay the process.
Correct. And then in a couple months, it will just be as easy to do at town meeting if we want to.
But we're so used to this now.
That's right. But yeah, that was definitely her strong recommendation, was that we not vote yes on those. So we could vote no on them or we could table them. Either way, they would have the same effect, I think, ultimately, of not moving them forward tonight, those 3.
Kevin.
Recognizing that we are seemingly about to table this, but having the benefit of Sarah, who's come out for the meeting, should we avail ourselves of some of her viewpoints on this topic?
Sarah, do you have time to and willingness to address?
I don't know if I'm going to help at all, but
Sarah, could you just identify yourself?
Sarah Riley, I'm the chair of the Lebanon Conservation Commission. I almost said Hanover. Sorry. I came because I just wanted to explain my understanding of at least part of what is being discussed. When I was pretty fresh on the Conservation Commission in 2019, the Hanover Trails Committee came to Lebanon Conservation Commission and asked, probably not the first time, if Lebanon Conservation Commission wanted to take over the Indian Ridge easement, as well as some of the more linear trail easements.
Right.
And I believe also the trailhead easement. Primarily because it doesn't make sense for Hanover Trails Committee to be expending their resources taking care of trails in Lebanon, which is very logical. It makes complete and total sense. But this is more than just a discussion about trails and who takes care of them. If it was that simple, you know, and if we were really concerned about our pocketbooks, we could simply do a memorandum of understanding and, you know, state, no worries, you know, our trails people will take care of the Indian Ridge Trail and any of these other trails as well. So I don't think it's about the trails. I think that we explained at that time, the Lebanon Conservation Commission explained to the Hanover Trails Commission that in Lebanon, we're not in the habit of taking on conservation easements in-house. We've had some bad outcomes. You know, it's sort of like who's watching the cookie jar. I don't know, or like, I don't know. It's kind of like a wolf in the hen house. I mean, lots of things can go wrong when there's no third party sort of making sure that terms of an easement or a deed are being enforced. And so we generally try to employ an organization that specializes in conservation easements to handle those. And so we have conservation easements with the Upper Valley Land Trust, with the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, for example, on the adjacent Boston Lot property just south of the Indian Ridge. So the land surrounding the lake, that's listed as Boston Lot on the map that Ari provided. That is city land, city-owned land, and the easement is held by the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests.
Okay.
And so our suggestion, our consensus at the time in February of 2019 was to recommend that Hanover look to perhaps one of those organizations to take on that easement in terms of the really important job of holding an easement and enforcing an easement. And so I'm hoping to find out if that happened. Did Hanover approach one of these organizations to take over the easement? Because that would be for the Lebanon Conservation Commission, that would be the ideal solution. Indian Ridge is part of the what we call like the larger landmark natural area. Boston, some people just refer to it as Boston Lot, but it's much larger than Boston Lot, and it's contiguous with Mink Brook here in Hanover, and just like Mink Brook, it's a really important ecological area. In Lebanon, we have significant ecological areas that are denoted on our city GIS. You can just get lost in those for days, and some of them are described in our natural resource inventory, others not so much, but there is a significant ecological area on the eastern side of this Indian Ridge easement. And so it's more than trails, and it's more than trail work. And so I think it's important to emphasize that, and the importance to both our, residents in Lebanon and your residents in Hanover to think about what it's there to protect. That easement is there to protect more than just a trail.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been very educating. Thank you very much, Sarah. I think the plan is to table this, or I think tabling it is the cleanest way to proceed forward, and then we can have further discussion in the ensuing weeks / months.
All right. I mean, if I may, just about the pond, I don't know anything about the pond easement. I just know that perhaps one of the I don't know how this cascade of passing on easements to Lebanon began, but I do know that our DPW does need to build a pump station on the northern end of that pond easement, sort
Who
of
does,
along
I'm
that.
sorry, who does?
Our Department of Public Works.
Okay.
Currently, I think our water systems, Lebanon and Hanover, are not connected. And so in order to make sure that the hospital has a more guaranteed source of water, there would be a pump station so that, I don't know, if ours goes out or if Hanover's goes out, the hospital can still get water. So a bit above my head, but they just needed permission from the landowner, which I believe is DHMC, and the easement holder, which is the Town of Hanover, to do that work on that pond easement.
Okay.
So that could be handled separately than the trail and the Indian Ridge easements. So they could be separate issues.
Joanna, did you,
I just was wondering,
can you come up to the microphone?
and now I'm speaking just as an interested citizen, and I do remember this discussion going down in 2019. And Lebanon saying, no, we don't want it. But now, my understanding is Lebanon has said, we'll accept it. And so I'm just wondering I didn't hear that part.
Sure. So when in 2019, it was the Lebanon Conservation Commission. Now my understanding is that our city manager and perhaps our planning department has been in communication with Hanover staff. But Lebanon Conservation Commission has not been a party to any of those conversations.
Okay.
And so I understand that here in Hanover, those trails and those easements are sort of managed by the Conservation Commission.
Correct.
And I think that it would be important to consider whether or not that would be the same if it was to be transferred to Lebanon.
Okay.
And because right now, that's not the plan that I know of. Nobody's informed us about it.
I think that's part of the reason we're tabling it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Anything else? Kari?
I have something that's
Okay.
So and I am sorry, I wasn't able to come last Monday. And again, when we first heard of this on the 27th, it sort of hit the packet the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and there wasn't a lot of chance before that hearing to look into things very deeply. But one of the points that Sarah made was that, we're sort of thinking of this as a package, all or nothing. And actually these things, as Rob said, they're bundles of interest. And it might make sense to convey some of them, but not others. So I just want to make sure that we think of it broadly. I also, not to get into the legal questions at all, but I think that one of the questions that the select board sort of needs to think about, on this easement or this proposal in particular is, what is to be gained and what is to be lost. And from my understanding, what is to be gained is that this conveyance would unburden Hanover from extraterritorial oversight and maintenance responsibilities. But then you say, well, how onerous are these responsibilities? And it's basically we do the easement monitoring on an annual basis, and we maintain some trails. And on that map, you can see where the trails are, and then there are some easements that don't have trails in them yet. And that's because the deed language said that we had the right to build trails, but we weren't obligated to, and we actually didn't. So if you look at what's on the ridge, that's maybe 1.3 miles of trail. And when you think about how many trails we maintain up on Moose Mountain, this is so close.
Kari, I agree with you. It's compared to what Hanover manages within Hanover, it is small. However, I do know that the Conservation Commission voted to release or transfer.
Transfer. They did. I'm not sure that they. Just as we in town are pretty new to this whole 41:14A. That there are some questions that I think weren't maybe vetted by the commission. And I know that, that all of us realize how overworked all of our staff members are and how we would love to take things off of their plate. But I where I was going with this is to say that I think that it's the select board's job to look at even the bigger, picture. And when you look at that map, what do you see? You see a lovely landscape that's very close to downtown Hanover, where we're expecting the population to grow, and where we should expect the demand for recreational resources to increase, including access to trails. This is accessible, by bus, both off of 10 and 120, and bicycle friendly and everything else. And the question is, and because right now, as Sarah was saying, there's not an easement on it. It's a contract really between Hanover and the landowner. And so we could look at it and say, is what's there now in terms of bicycling, etc., is that in the best interest of our residents? If we were to transfer it, like say under the power lines, you can see on that map how the power lines, you could have a off-road, a way for people to get from West Lebanon to Hanover and vice versa by bicycle and not be, in the road. But right now, the easement says that there's not supposed to be any bicycles. But if we're holding the deed and we think that's a good idea, we could talk with the landowner. I don't know if that's still Dartmouth at this point or who owns that land now, but we could say, you know what, it'd be really great for our community if we did this thing a little differently. Right now, there's not a trail from Sachem Fields over to the ridge that I've been able to find on any trail map.
Some people do that. I know some residents who live at Sachem and then commute over.
Yeah, from the village there is, but not from the field. So say that we had a rec
Sure, you
program.
can get there.
Pardon me?
You can get there.
Well, there's an easement there, but there's no trail there that's official.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that we could look at all of these, there's, all of these trails, and we could say, are those serving the needs of our residents? And, as good as Lebanon might be at maintaining a trail, I don't know that they're going to be thinking about it from the lens of the Hanover resident. What do Hanover residents need? What does Hanover Parks and Rec need?
Kari, I'm gonna interrupt you, just not because you're not saying anything wonderful. Everything your ideas are brilliant. It sounds like more of an issue for the Conservation Commission. It's just really.
Yeah, part of it is, but I think that, again, as a select board, you actually have in your purview an even sort of bigger responsibility. And I just wanted to bring up that, if you all tonight thought to yourself, you know what, we really, what's to be gained, what's to be lost, we have, it would be so much better if we just kept this because it's not all that onerous.
Okay.
Then we wouldn't need to send the lawyers
Here's what I
off.
think we should do, Kari. I think we should. I'm not prepared to do that discussion without talking to the Conservation Commission. So I think we should table it, and then bring it back to them, and then have that discussion. But it's a valid discussion. I completely agree that it should be talked about, and we have other issues to resolve on that anyway.
That's true, and again, the philosophy towards easements have shifted back and forth, and if this conversation started in 2006, there are just considerations now that weren't on the table then. And so, again, though, if you were to decide that actually there's a lot of reason why we should keep them, then we could save the lawyers from going off and conferring and spending money. So I sort of feel like this first discussion that the select board should have is what's to be gained, what's to be lost. If you want to keep it, that kind of sends you in a different direction.
Just for whatever it's worth, I would just recommend our next discussion is from our attorney.
Yeah.
And we should get a status from her on where she thinks this falls from a procedural standpoint. That would be my recommendation before we decide to have any conversation, because that may end up guiding the conversation of the select board or the Conservation Commission or some other stakeholder.
Right, and I guess I was thinking more before you start into negotiations with Lebanon to know what what you really are thinking and what's possible, would be useful.
Okay.
So just so I understand, this map, thank you, Cory, shows the town playing fields, camping rink, and it's also shaded green, public land or easement. Now, is that property where the camping rink is, the town playing fields, is that
That is
Hanover
owned now
owned.
by the town of Hanover and is
Owns
part
it.
of this swap.
okay, so that's owned by the town of Hanover?
Yes.
Yes,
It's not an easement, it's
Correct.
actually
No.
part of,
And we own the land under camping rink, but we don't own camping rink.
right.
okay. And so then
We meaning the town.
yes, okay. So then the town playing field block, there, adjacent to that, there is what looks like a corridor that connects up to the Indian Ridge block.
Right, so I tried to put a TR1, and that's for Trail 1, so
Okay.
that's Trail Easement 1 if you look at the deed. And currently, that is an easement where there doesn't appear to be a trail on it. And again, we had the right to build a trail, but I don't think we did.
But that is not a property of the town of Hanover, that is
No, but
just
we
an
hold the
easement.
easement, and we have a right to put a trail there should we want to.
Okay.
I love maps. I can do this all night.
And and now I'm going to ask a question of Joanna, if I may. In the long-range plan for Dartmouth, there was some discussion of a road corridor from Sachem over to DHMC. Can you, how does that relate to any of these easements, if at all?
So the easements are malleable easements, so
Okay,
they can be moved. And so the Dartmouth, planning for possibilities, and we've met and have talked to the city of Lebanon over the years in terms of planning options, and the concept is, connecting the Sachem Village Road over to DHMC and making it bike and transit only and emergency access. Emergency access would be great because you don't have to go through Hanover or vice versa. And it would be great for transit because you would save the congestion at 120 and get people right from the west coast to the east coast, if you will.
but the concept would be like a shuttle bus or
Yeah,
something
like
that.
running the advanced transit through there, e-bikes, right now there's a lot of mountain biking in there, and even though you only see one trail on the ridge, there's hundreds of trails. It's like, it's a place that you can easily get lost. There are so many trails.
So many trails.
And some of them are really nicely marked for bikers to commute from Sachem to DH. And then some of them are just wandering moments.
Yeah.
What's called Jive Turkey, and it's a black diamond.
Ouch, okay, all right.
All right. Anything else,
Okay.
Carrie? So I move that we table the transfers of the easements to Lebanon.
Second.
Any further discussion? Nancy, are you okay?
Yes, I am, and I mentioned this before to the board. Alex says that this starts the process all over again for those easements. My very strong encouragement is that we craft these into and amongst the board meetings that we already have on the schedule, such that nothing bleeds into town meeting. We've just seen how much discussion there is on these relatively small topics.
Yeah.
And I think that as part of town meeting, it could be a full hour's conversation of a much larger cast of characters.
And we are holding 3 public hearings, which I think meets the spirit of that intent quite nicely. Call for a vote. All in favor of tabling? Aye. Nancy?
Nancy Carter, aye.
Great, that carries. So now we're going to turn to the others, of which there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Camping rink easement.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Old Tech, Hanover Inn, Old Tech Drive, West Wheelock, North College, and Pine Park. We've gotten rid of we have dealt with the others. I'm going to move that we well, I can't move that we accept, trying to craft the motion, because some of them are releasing and some of them are accepting. So I'm gonna move that we proceed with the easements as I read earlier and are listed in our packet dated today.
Easements pertaining to Dartmouth College.
Easements pertaining to Dartmouth College and the Town of Hanover.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this? These are, as we've all said many times, these are, some of these are as old as I think 12 years or so, and we are cleaning up land relationships between the town and the college, some of which are really small little, like basically conveying, for example, the North College Street retaining wall, which is that wonderful wall that the college built, giving them actually some of the property that it's sitting on, as I understand. Any further discussion? Nancy?
No, I think that they're all very strong and clear, and I would vote in favor.
Okay, anything from the public? Great, hearing nothing, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Nancy?
Nancy Carter, aye.
Thank you. Great, I think that went swimmingly. So that closes public hearing 3 of 3. Although there will be more on that topic later. We are getting down to public comment for issues not related to anything on the agenda. I think we can skip.
Mr. Chairman, as Joanna returns to the dais, I would like to excuse myself and ask that you or Carrie or Joanna call me at the beginning of the non-public session, please.
Awesome. Thank you for attending, Nancy.
You're very welcome.
You
Talk to you later.
Teddy turned this off. Hit the red. It's a cute little device you got here.
Disconnected.
Oh, disconnected.
For public comment after. We were past that. So I was just.
I have to remind you that you are limited to 5 minutes, and that direct questions should be directed to me. We may or may not choose to answer questions.
Okay, so you might not know the answer to this, but I called Town Hall
I may not answer it.
last week to say that a number of people that I know have not gotten their tax bills, and it was going to be looked into it, and I've not heard anything back, and I have not still gotten my tax bill. I mean, I got it emailed to me, but other people that I know still have not gotten their tax bills. There's nothing on the website saying, look out for your tax bills. It's my understanding it's mostly a problem off on Hanover Center Road.
Did you call the town clerk?
Yes.
What did they tell you?
That they were going to look into it, that they were going to call the Etna post office, that they would check the Hanover post office, and it's been a week. And I'm just concerned that I know people who, when I ask them, have you gotten your tax bill? It's like, oh, and they haven't thought about it. And it's due 10 days from today. And I mean, and I'm on it, but I just wanted to know if there was any update.
Actually, I hadn't heard about this. Had you heard about this? No.
Okay.
Did you guys, Carrie, you got your tax bill, did you?
Yes.
Jen?
Yeah,
I got
I
mine.
knew that there were some problems with
I didn't know
the
that.
initial tax bill.
Okay.
The layout was wonky. But
So
that
all I
got
can say is
fixed.
I still haven't gotten mine, and I was hoping that somehow the problem was just with that post office and that they were gonna push them out.
Yeah.
But
No, I mean,
evidently-
I've heard from a number of people that they've received them for sure, and they're like, whoa.
Yeah, so I don't
Yeah.
know if it's I mean, I haven't.
Is that
heard
something you can check on, Alex?
Yeah,
I don't even know how to check, but
Well,
I'll check with the staff.
yeah.
okay.
And then if there is still a problem, just doing what you can to really getting the word out there that if you didn't get your tax bill, and that's part of why I'm here for those 3 people who are watching, that, call.
there may
town
be
hall.
more than 3 cart.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kari. That was unknown to me. So now we're moving into budget and finance update.
There's not much here, just wanted to keep it on the agenda each meeting.
Great.
So
Thank
we
you for
have
doing
our
that.
operating requests out, we have our capital requests out. We're probably gonna end up being 2 weeks behind, it says 1 week in here. So we've got a couple of departments that have never done their capital before, so we had a meeting with a couple of them today and went over some more stuff. So we've got a couple weeks left, maybe 2 weeks left on getting everything in. And then we'll start to get the capital stuff off to the CIPC and start to work on some of the operating among the staff, and that's about it for now. And then Ellen will be here for January 8th, and we'll do a little bit more of an update.
So I know at the last meeting, I asked about the $500,000 undesignated fund balance drop, and lots of people are scratching their heads as to how that could be, since it didn't seem like it was a revenue problem, didn't seem like it was an expense problem, and nevertheless, the undesignated fund balance was down $500,000, and you were going to get back to us.
Yeah, so Ellen has been it was the same question that Kari had. Ellen has been in contact with her, and we're trying to get some more information.
Yeah.
And I think you spoke to her today, or
I
by
got an email
yeah.
today.
So we don't have an answer yet, but we will, and we'll share it with the finance committee and the select board. So I don't think there's anything you need to worry about, but yeah, we get the information.
Thank you. And we have two business requiring two.
One more discussion.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I didn't.
There's one more discussion item too.
Oh, please. What did I miss?
The discussion of select board reports.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
This is
This is
What?
when I was supposed to,
What?
we're supposed to prepare bullets.
Well, so I wanted to ask a question. In the last meeting, we talked about
Oh, yeah, we did.
submitting reports ahead of time, but then when Carrie Osgood and I were working on the timing of that and how to collect them, we weren't sure what people wanted to do. So there's sort of like two options really. One was to get everything in before the packet goes out.
Yeah.
And so that would mean that basically the Wednesday before the Monday meeting, we'd need everything in. So then we can get it all organized, we can get it in the mailing, but that also means that we might miss a meeting or two. I'm not sure how often, most of the meetings aren't on Thursdays and Fridays, CIPC is, but basically, or if there's something on it, but basically we then miss, the written report would not contain anything that happened, Thursday, Friday, or Monday. So if the attempt is to sort of build a record of the different reports and make that easier to find, it would be missing a little bit, but we did think that people might want to see it in the packet, so you could all see it ahead of time, see each other's reports. Just weren't sure where people were, or if you wanted to do something different and wait till the Monday nights, but then people wouldn't see it ahead of time, but then they'd be totally up to date. And then we could basically still email the report to the minute taker. So either way, they could get included in the minutes more accurately or more thoroughly.
Isn't that part of?
I think that was the main goal.
That's the main goal, correct?
And then it sounded like people were, oh yeah, it'd be nice to, get a chance to look at people's bullet points before the meeting.
Yeah, I forgot to do it.
And we didn't send anything out about it. I just added this as a question.
Yeah.
I think that in reality, if we give our bullet points the night of the meeting and it gets added into the agenda, into the minutes, that was kind of my push, was
Sure,
that
sure.
it just says in our minutes, it says select board reports, and that's it. And so I think that if there are important announcements or something important happened at the meeting, that should be incumbent upon the select board members, and that we, can give you post-meeting bullets or bullets at the meeting, because I don't think I'll do it beforehand.
Yeah. Well,
I'm lucky to
bullets
get
at the
through this
meeting,
stuff
and then
on
we
the
have to
weekend.
how do we get? If we do bullets at the meeting, then that's whoever is doing the minutes will just take them off the tape.
well, or if we each take the time to craft the bullets so that we're a little more formal in our remarks. I mean, that will take a few minutes. Then we can just email them to Carrie and say, okay,
Here are the 3 bullets.
here's the 3 bullets from the bike walk committee or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Would
Yeah,
that
that
work?
would be fine
Should we-
from, yeah.
Should we wait until we're a full board to make that decision?
I think
talked
we
about
can do
last
that.
time.
I think it's not I don't think it's a controversial moment. I think
No.
that we all agreed that it would be good to have more content in the minutes about, what we're reporting out on. And I think I would boldly say that Nancy and Jenny would be in support of that, and that we just need, if the routine is, we report out, hopefully we prepare our reports, we report out and then send it to Carrie,
Yeah, so Monday night basically to
Yeah.
email that, yeah.
assuming that it's before my bedtime.
Yep. Yeah, or when you come to the, or beforehand or whatever, yeah.
Right. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
Athos, you good with that?
Say it again.
Basically, each select board member is gonna be responsible for a few bullets on what happened at their various meetings. And we'll send it to Carrie
When?
on Monday after it's reported or the day of the select board meeting. So it gets into the minutes, not that it's in the packet beforehand.
Sounds good.
I would just say if everyone could do that by midnight of Monday, so that when we come in Tuesday morning, we don't have to follow up with anybody and it's all there, that would be great too. So either before the meeting or during the meeting or after the meeting.
No, we don't want people doing homework during class.
Everybody's got different teacher styles.
Yeah, no, you gotta stay focused on the meeting. Be one with the crowd.
Okay. Anything else there?
How's it?
Sorry, just give me one thing. So there's been a recommendation to set a public hearing on Monday, January 8th, 2024 to accept unanticipated funds in the amount of $76,195.02 from the state of New Hampshire DOT, representing a special one-time highway payment. And that is, I guess we have to deal with that separately from the next one. So I move that we set a public hearing, just as I just said. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further?
I think just for clarity, this is a one-time highway payment based on the number of class 4 and class 5 miles in the town as well as the municipality's population, according to the note that they sent us, or you.
That's cool. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have a quorum? No, we don't have Nancy. And then this also on January 8th, there was been a recommendation
To set a public hearing, you want me to jump in? To set a public hearing?
On
Thank you.
January 8th to accept.
Okay, I get to read the money.
unanticipated
See, Nancy always gets to read that, my favorite warrant article, which is when she reads the millions of dollars, millions of numbers. I love doing that. $64,025.85. Notice how perfectly I did that? From the state of New Hampshire DOT, representing a special one-time bridge payment. I'd like to move that we do that.
Seconded.
All in favor?
funds. Aye.
Aye. Okay, those carry. Do we have to again table do we even
did
have to
that
talk
last
about
time.
this?
We did
Because I thought we did it for till
No,
January.
we've got it scheduled, we're just keeping
Yeah.
it on the agenda so we don't forget about it.
Thank
So
you for
people
doing
are
that.
aware that it's on for January 8th.
I probably would forget it. Thank you for doing it. So our consent, well, if there's only one item, it's not really a consent agenda, is it? But basically, it's a list of wonderful folks who are serving on the Hanover Bike Walk Committee. What we are doing is a townwide effort to not necessarily formalize, but sort of schedule and keep track of when folks are going on and off committees that the select board is in charge of appointing to. For terrible English explanation of that. So there's, in our packet, there's a list of wonderful folks on the Hanover Bike Walk Committee. I move the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Awesome. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town manager report.
All right. So the first, which is not exactly an event, though it will be, but it is exciting, which is the ice rink at Dartmouth is back, although not quite today.
Not today.
Although maybe it's filling up with water today. And as soon as it gets cold enough, it'll be frozen, and it's going to be maintained in a cooperation between the Parks and Rec Department and the college. And so hopefully that will be open soon, and that will be open to the Dartmouth community and to the public as well. And we'll be doing some events on that over the winter. So we're all pretty excited about that. I know that was something that people in the community were really interested in having access to, and the college was interested in collaborating with us on that. So we're happy for that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's really nice of the college to be opening that up, and much appreciated. And I'm glad the town is working with them.
Agreed.
And in prior years, was that strictly Dartmouth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Community
And-
members could use it, but Dartmouth put it up, Dartmouth.
Right, it's on their property, and they put it up.
It was a COVID.
Right.
outcome.
And the board was sensitive to the fact that people in Hanover like to skate, and we updated, I believe, I don't know, everyone go back there, the rink behind the Etna Fire Station, which I know is very well attended, even though I've never been there. And there was something else we did in that regard too, I can't remember. It might have been the major.
I think it was the one, we got a new liner or something like that.
I saw it, you can see it.
Is it up there now, Kari?
What's that?
Is it waiting for cold weather?
Yes.
And I mean, at one point too, there was, the Occa Pond was,
Skatable.
back in the day.
But I think now that we're going to turn into West Virginia,
Don't say that.
there's no way around it. I was biking in shorts today. I did a 20-mile ride
Sure.
in shorts, and it was sunny. It was amazingly sunny between horrific rainstorms. I mean, it's mid-December, and I'm riding in shorts. It's just...
It's wackadoo. Okay,
Okay.
that's exciting.
So that's fun. Moving on down the line to human resources updates. So since last month, we had 3 employees leave employment and 2 employees start employment. So we welcome Lisa Bertanta Howe and Earl Miller to Public Works. And just an update, because we're at the end of the year, or calendar year, we've had 26 employees leave employment and 38 employees start employment, not counting seasonal employees. So it's not as much turnover as we had.
Sorry, since when? What was it?
For the year.
2023. That's great.
So last year's was higher, but it's still a lot. And that basically means that we're onboarding or offboarding more than one employee a week, not including the seasonal employees. And so there's obviously a lot of time that goes into that, and logistics and money. And this is part of this sort of discussion that we've obviously been having a lot of, which is that we've got this huge retirement cliff and a lot of transition happening in the organization right now.
Excuse me, Alex. 2 questions. One, who is spending most of the time? Is it Katie or someone else?
It's HR and finance that spend a lot of the logistical time, and the departments themselves, do any trainings or anything that they might have in place.
And I guess my second question is, we had a number of openings. It seems like we're slightly in the black in this regard. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's kind of gone back and forth. We're definitely not at the worst for sure. And in the since I've been here, we're not at the worst point. But it also is amazing. I mean, we'll get to Parks and Rec was fully staffed for about a week, and then lost 2 key people. So it's it's sort of like the victories are short. But we're in better shape than we were in, but we are still hurting a little bit, and we've lost several employees in the last 6 months to childcare issues, where they just literally do not have childcare around here, and so they can't work for the town. That's been frustrating, and obviously the housing issues are contributing to it, and so all of this is obviously on everybody's minds here, but just because we're at the end of the calendar year, I thought I would update with the year-to-date numbers. So a little better than last year, but still that's a lot. And because we're not really set up to do succession planning from a budget perspective, that really challenges the sort of transition period that we're in right now. But we are identifying some solutions on how to get through that, and we've been having a lot of good meetings with staff throughout the year. So we're sort of making ground up in some ways, but it's going to take a little time to put those solutions, online, and we're still sort of dealing with COVID and the high housing prices and lack of childcare and all that kind of stuff. And this is not just Hanover, but a lot of municipal governments. Every municipal conference I go to now is about retention and recruitment.
How many open recs do we have?
Right now, probably about, I'm not sure exactly, probably about 10. Let's see. Give you more. I think that's what I wanted. 13. 13. Yeah. Well, actually, really 12, because fire chief is counted in that. It's not really open anymore. And so that's down a little bit from sort of our peak, which was closer to 20, at least in my year here. But yeah, there's still a few pain points in a few positions. The fire chief search, we've begun the screening of those candidates. And we're sort of off to the races in that process, which is a 4 to 6 month process still of multiple interview rounds and all that. But I mentioned before we've gotten a bunch of competitive applications. We also have an update about about flexible schedules, and so we talked about this a little bit before. We talked with staff about. We did the summer hours pilot this year, which we thought went very well. We didn't get any complaints from the public, at least nothing that was on my radar that I heard from anybody. And our staff were really big fans of that, and a bunch of departments have asked us to kind of keep that going. So we talked about it a little bit and determined that the best way to do this is not changing building hours or service hours, even though it's one of the models that we could think about in the future. So like I mentioned that, Lebanon is 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, which I've certainly taken advantage of before coming into work here, go over there, take care of my motor vehicle stuff when coming here. So having later hours or earlier hours, even if it's fewer days per week, can be helpful, but just based on kind of ease of implementation and where people's heads were at, decided to keep the hours the same in all of the buildings for the most part, like town hall's hours wouldn't change. But there's a bunch of departments within town hall where the staff will now be able to, even though this has been granted, sometimes in the past it's been very inconsistent. Some departments were allowed to do it, some weren't. But that all staff, up to the supervisor and department head's discretion, are able to do a planned flexible schedule where they can take off a day. They just have to keep the office running the whole time. So we're excited about that, because I think that is one of the things that we hear about from current staff and also from prospective staff as one of the higher priorities, is having some flexibility within people's schedules. And it's really important from my perspective as a manager to ensure that staff have a little bit more of the ability to access services that are only open during the work week, so that people don't need to take a day off every time they have to go to the doctor's office or go to the bank. But that staff here, it's one of the benefits of working in Hanover, would be that all staff have at least a day every 2 weeks where they're not scheduled for work during the work week. Our police department, our fire department, the Howe Library, most of the staff there are already kind of on that schedule, on a shift schedule. And so this would extend that to the other staff as well. So there's no cost to that, really, ultra minimal, and something that we wanted to move on. So I don't know if there's any questions about any of that. I think we'll probably try another summer hours this year, like a modification of this schedule, and see if anything changes one way or the other. And I'll kind of keep you all updated from the kind of personnel standpoint of the pros and cons. And certainly, I mean, this shouldn't matter to the members of the public one way or the other, because there shouldn't be any difference in people accessing services. But certainly, if something comes up that anybody notices, please do, or something has changed that we didn't intend, please do let me know.
Okay, so you describe this different ways. Take a few hours if you need to go to the bank, you need to go to the doctor. But then you said a day off every 2 weeks, or a day that's a work day, but you actually don't have to come in every 2 weeks. One sounds like flexibility, hey, no problem, just work your hours this week. The other sounds like this is a way to have a long weekend. I mean, those are conceptually a little bit different in my mind. One is having some flexibility at work so that you can do things. The other is, here's a way to have more time off. Work a longer week and then you get a day off. Are they conceptually the same? Am I misreading that?
I mean, there's multiple benefits of doing this, so both of those would be on the list of benefits.
Okay.
So if that makes sense, so one being that it allows people flexibility in their schedule, so if they're not scheduled for work on every Friday, or every Wednesday, or every Tuesday, whatever the schedules are, then they know they have that, they can plan things out ahead of time, and it decreases absenteeism pretty significantly because people don't have to use their time off to then do things like that. So certain employees have that benefit already, and certain employees don't have that benefit. And it definitely, it allows people, and not everybody would take a Friday off because that doesn't work, right? Under the scheme that we've proposed, right? People have to rotate the different days. I would be all in favor of just having a full 4-day work week. I think 5-day work weeks are pretty antiquated at this point, and a lot of the data shows that they don't create better productivity than 4-day work weeks, and other flexible schedules are much better. It's also what a lot of people are asking for when we're interviewing people, and it's also what a lot of our competing municipalities like Lebanon, for better or for worse, even if we thought it wasn't the best idea, and I happen to think it is a very good idea, but even if we didn't, we're still a competitive employer, and when people are looking at, 2 different towns, if they get a 3-day weekend every weekend in one town and the other they don't, I mean, that's an easy choice for a lot of people, and the amount that we have to pay to sort of make up for that is a lot, and we're not quite there. So I would say it has kind of both those benefits. Salary employees and like department heads have some of this flexibility to some degree already. So this really extends it to the rest of the staff who aren't covered. So we've gotten a huge kind of thumbs up in the staff for asking for it, and for something that doesn't really cost anything, and doesn't really change much of the sort of daily operations. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer for us.
And department heads are not finding it difficult to staff the functions?
No, they're in favor of this. I mean, their staff are asking for it. And we've had a couple department heads that have, as soon as the summer hours ended, requested, the ability to continue doing it because the staff were positive about it.
No, I think Carrie's question was, are department heads able to fulfill the needs of the department?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was the department heads. This was from a department head meeting, this plan. So we put a couple different options out there and asked department heads what they thought would be best for their staff, and then based on that answer, does that work for them? Having to run the department, and this was the option that everybody said was the best for their staff. So personally, if it were my choice, I would probably say, just do a regular 4-day work week and close town hall 1 day a week, and have later days or earlier days, and give the public kind of better hours to access us. I've done that in 2 other towns where we were open in an evening 1 day per week, and we closed a half day early on every Friday, and we got way more members of the public who came in on the late night than came in on the Friday afternoon. But again, that's just my own personal opinion. But yeah, this was the kind of option that department heads thought was the best way to move forward. And again, we've got several departments that already have this in place, already have shift schedules, and then salaried employees like department heads already have this sort of flexibility. They're already allowed to do this, but this extends it to everybody else.
Any more thoughts?
No, no, not on that. Just
I do have one, just before this was the comment in your report that the retention and recruitment study is complete.
yep, the study portion, yeah.
And I was wondering if we could get copies of it, of the report.
There's not such a thing at this point. We've been talking about it as a group. So the study portion is complete, but there isn't a complete study that, there's not a document done.
Okay.
So you all are up to speed fully on where we're at.
Okay, so, but at some point it needs to be in writing and a report.
That's right.
And so we'll get a copy of that.
Yeah, but that's a few months away.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yes, yeah, you don't have to ask me to write a report. Next is just I wanted to communicate, I've gotten, in the last couple of weeks, I've gotten a bunch of letters from different residents who have just expressed a lot of appreciation for our community nurse services. So Doris Yates is our community nurse, and I just wanted to make sure to, a couple of those asked us to pass the feedback along to the select board, so just wanted to make sure to pass that on to all of you.
That is wonderful, and it's nice to hear that feedback. What services does she do?
So basically it is, it's not exclusively but predominantly, for example, if you're a senior and you have a question about the medication, but this isn't something that you need to go to the doctor to do, but you need a medical professional to help you. Our community nurse is a registered nurse, so she's able to practice at that level of care. And we'll go meet with people, take the time, it's free, they're not rushing to fill an insurance quota or something. So sort of help people quarterback a little bit any other care that they might need, make sure prescriptions are up to date, help them navigate the process basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Does she have, really, I'm trying to figure out a way, is she well-staffed? Meaning, is she able to accomplish what she needs to do?
No. There is greater demand than there is capacity. We're looking at increasing that capacity currently. There is definitely demand for the services.
And I assume there's no billing.
No, not from the town.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a great service. And that's something that we're looking at maybe expanding in the future. We've gotten a lot of interest in it from the community. Excuse me. Next, moving on to the budget and finance. The only other update was just a reminder, we already talked about the tax bills due in 10 days. Excuse me again. Next, moving on to housing and redevelopment. These are actually two very similar updates that I had in the last report. But our attorneys are still in conversation between the town and Twin Pines. That's the sort of update on the Mink Brook Community Workforce Housing Project. And then the other is there's a rental registration postcard that will be shortly mailed to all property owners to go online and register their properties for rental inspections as well. Pull up the traffic safety memo.
In terms of the workforce housing, is there a estimated time when we'll take that back up on the agenda? Hopefully before budget in February?
Yeah, certainly before that. Yeah. I don't know if it would be the next meeting in January or the next meeting. I was hoping to have a more substantive update today, but everything's a little kind of slower this time of year, so certainly before the budget meetings.
Okay.
So next is a couple updates from our fourth quarter traffic safety meeting. So we had 3 different issues on there in the attached memo, and I'll just very quickly run through those. One, which is the e-scooter ordinance. And so Hanover Police requested that we kind of pick this back up. We had met about this a bunch of times last year, but it sort of fell off the radar a little bit. When we went back through this again, we also found more out-of-date stuff in other ordinances that we currently have on the books. So like in our ordinance number 2, it refers to, I think, some zoning districts that don't exist. There's some fines and fees that don't make any sense. There's a couple things in there that need to be updated for it to be enforceable at all. But we're also basically trying to do this in a way that's not patchwork. It's a little patchwork as far as at the state level, how bicycles or e-bikes or scooters or e-scooters and vehicles and devices are all regulated. It'd be nice to create one local ordinance that kind of organizes everything from our perspective. So we all provided some feedback on the prior draft, and that's going off to our attorney. I'm hoping for our Q1 meeting to have an update on that, but it might be the Q2 meeting, just from a realistic standpoint of the amount of stuff we have over the next couple months. So just that was just to keep that on the radar, and that is to help ensure that especially the downtown is safe after some issues and incidents with people riding things on the sidewalk they're not supposed to be. Okay, the next is there was some requests about a sidewalk on Verona Ave. I know Jenny sent a question in about this, and there was at least one other resident who emailed in a question. So in fiscal year 21, there was $33,000 that was allocated towards making pedestrian improvements on Verona Ave. Athos is gaveling.
I'm gaveling without using my hands. That was kind of cool.
Gaveling with the mind. That's pretty good. And so the
I'm sorry, how much money was it?
$33,000
In what year? 2021.
So we do have that money. I think we've got one or two more years where we could spend it before it lapses. That $33,000 is not enough to build a multi-use path on Verona, which is what part of the questions were. It also looks like on Verona, in talking, obviously this is why did we have this group together, in talking with the group, utility poles would have to be moved, drainage would have to be redone, so that's not a super cheap to do a multi-use path. To do a sidewalk, we could do a good portion of it with that money. And so we were suggesting a meeting with Bike Walk and local residents who live on the road to go out there, talk about the project, make sure everybody's aware of what we're talking about. From the staff perspective, we don't believe it would be the best use of money to spend 3 or 4 times that amount to do a multi-use path versus the sidewalk. There's other high priority needs that you're going to have from the capital request this year, where we recommend putting $100,000 not to this. And basically the recommendation is to meet with the stakeholders and spend the $33,000 and build the sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't recall the topic entertaining a MUP. I thought it was more of a sidewalk that they desperately wanted.
One of the letters Jenny asked us to consider the MUP if possible.
Yeah.
So we talked about it and said it's way too expensive at least from our perspective.
Everything we've heard at this board, I think, has been, it's unsafe to walk. We need to be able to walk safely.
And the sidewalk will certainly.
How do you know? You don't know how far that would extend. Verona stops at Willow Spring, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the idea was it would go around the corner to like the driveway of the College Hill.
You know that, whatever.
You know, that
it's called.
mustardy colored one.
Yeah.
Am I misremembering, or was there some earmark from a congressional delegation relative to a MUP?
That's
different.
along the sewer line,
yeah.
but not Verona. So the MUP would get you kind of as far as Brook Hollow. It would kind of dump you to Verona, and then you could go left or right.
Right. So I'm guessing what Jenny's referring to in her request to consider is
Could you continue?
extending. Could you make it contiguous? I'm not sure we desperately need a sidewalk.
I mean, one of the concepts in terms of this multi-use path was to connect it through the neighborhood, like Valley Road, over through behind Thompson Arena, so you could get to the co-op, get to the high school, kind of in that neighborhood area. And so that was one of the concepts that the Bike Walk people worked on. Verona over the years, it's the most, outside of student population, it is the most populated part of our community. It's the densest population in terms of per person per like square foot. And so the idea is, because of that sharp blind corner, the hope was to at least have one safe walking area there. You know, a lot of the people live in Brook Hollow, and so they'd be crossing the street, but at least you'd have a sidewalk on one side and getting around that corner.
Okay. I lived down there millions of years ago, and it really needs a sidewalk. 30 years ago.
So if everyone is, if there's no sort of concerns there, I'll communicate back to staff, and we'll reach out to Bike Walk and just, start to get that in the process of getting a meeting with the local residents to look at the scope of the project at some point. Okay, so that sounds good. And then there's just a couple prior issues that I just wanted to make sure to follow up on. So I kind of lumped these all in one category. One is the Dunster crosswalk. We did hear back from NHDOT that they are reviewing it. The staff perspective is that they will not fund this project. If that is the case, then the staff will go back and ask the DOT's permission to do the project, but at our cost. So we did, if you recall, we did agree to keep $30,000 that we were planning on doing sidewalk repair. We didn't spend that with the intention of keeping that available for doing this project in this fiscal year. And we're going to attempt, we'll see how the budget goes, we're going to attempt to try and get a little bit of money in the budget so there's a little bit more discretion through the year to do projects like this, so we don't have to wait a year to approve a $20,000 or $30,000 project that might improve safety in the meantime. So that's on the Dunster side. On the Etna side, we will be requesting in the budget next year, we've already talked about it, on the staff side, of requesting some speed feedback devices. That's something, even though there was a resident at one point who did offer to buy it, there were a handful of logistical and insurance and other questions, especially if we wanted to move it and who owned it and access to the data and some other things like that. But really, it's sort of embarrassing to, if we want to manage the safety of the roads, we need to put the money in the budget to buy those speed feedback devices. So that's important enough. The DOT did say that we could put them up there now, but because most of the drivers are driving right around, I forget exactly where the 85th percentile was, but it was like 30.8, or it was right over this, it was like right around 30 miles an hour. We don't think a feedback device would do a whole lot of good because people are already basically driving the speed limit. The goal would be that if we move the speed limit down to 25, then the device would hopefully help people drive 25 instead of 30, and I think we're all familiar with the benefits that could have. So.
And where does DOT stand on that potential question?
They're reviewing it.
Great.
I do not have any TA. But I will definitely keep you all updated on that too. We've also, we talked before in our prior quarterly meeting just about capacity and staffing for these sorts of complaints and issues that are brought up, but also kind of more proactive planning. And just wanted to make sure all of you were aware. We've had a lot of these conversations about traffic and mobility related things in the select board. So that staff, one of the things that we're working on from a budget perspective is a request for next year that might help increase a little bit of that capacity. Excuse me. And some of that would be extending our collaboration with the Regional Planning Commission as well, to help us on doing some more proactive sort of transit and mobility stuff on the staff side. So a little bit more capacity to work with Bike Walk, a little bit more capacity to translate the new master plan into sort of more actionable, making sure that all the bid specs get written correctly, just making sure there's a kind of key tie in there. So just wanted to put that out there, that something is a concern of mine and Public Works and Planning and Police is just the sort of capacity. And so we did talk about that a little bit, and we do have some early thinking about that, but I'll save the rest of that for February.
Is that one FTE, half an FTE? What are you thinking about?
I'd rather not answer that at this point. I'd rather just work on the idea and come back.
So, but basically it's more human power to
More-
create more capacity. So yes, it's gonna be staff, right?
Potentially, maybe I shouldn't have said anything, I just wanted to keep you all updated, but I'd rather not get out ahead of that. So I wouldn't assume anything, just that the goal of ours, and this was identified in the select board goals too, is that we're gonna come with we have some ideas of how to try to increase the capacity a little bit.
Thank you.
Building anticipation.
Or controlling information.
No, I think that as a select board member, asking me to circumvent the staff that are studying this is not really totally appropriate. So I don't think that's what I'm doing. Yeah. And so perhaps I communicated too much and I just won't, if you prefer me not to give a heads up to the select board about things like that in the future, I'm happy to not do that. But I thought it was the right thing to do to let you all know that the staff have a concern about capacity.
You did the right thing. I guess I would say it would be good if we had a fluid conversation. If you're thinking about adding resources, why wouldn't you tell the select board? It's not it's a conversation.
Yeah, but because I'm still working on it with the staff, and so as the town manager, if I came out in a public meeting, which this is, before the staff have finished doing the due diligence, I don't think that would be fair of me to do that.
That's fair.
So moving on to downtown Hanover, I think there are I don't know how I've lost count at this point, but there are dozens, if not more than 100 of these really great lighted up stars all around town, and that was sort of a project that mostly Heather Drynan in Dartmouth and John Pepper Beloco really spearheaded. Constructing them and wiring them and doing all that and handing them out, and I will say there is a lot of light in the downtown right now, which just kind of feels nice. And
it looks nice.
This was all thrown together like a week before the, there was some planning a little bit ahead of time, but it took some time to get all the supplies, but there was a lot of work like a week before the tree lighting. And so this is sort of just the first stage of this project, but at least the feedback that I've gotten has been good. Not too bright, but it kind of livens things up a little bit in downtown. And so just appreciate it's another nice kind of Dartmouth collaboration with some of our business owners. And I think that is it.
Solstice is almost upon us. It's almost 3 more days. Select board reports, Joanna.
Nothing to report.
But you did attend the breakfast, which was fun.
Oh, I did, yes, that was fun. Holiday cheer for our staff, so that was good.
The annual department heads cooking for all the staff and raffles, and it was nice, yeah.
It was really a lot of fun. Carrie, myself, Joanna, and Nancy made it to it, which...
And thank you for being there.
It's fun.
Everybody at my table won the...
You had a lucky table.
Won a
raffle, yeah.
It was pretty funny.
It doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. No.
There were a lot of prizes, though.
There were a lot of prizes. Some of them were pretty cool. There was as I mentioned earlier this evening, there was a Conservation Commission meeting on the 13th, and I already talked about the easement on Goodfellow Road. We talked about that, and there's discussion with the Conservancy with regards to Adams Farm. There's fundraising that's going to be going on there, which we'll hear more about in the near future when that's planned better. There was discussion about biodiversity subcommittee, talk about deer density being too high, and there was one thing that was really beneficial for me in particular as a new member of the Conservation Commission is Rob went through with great detail how he monitors easements which he does on a yearly basis. There's some really neat software. What he does is one of the things he or one of his designees is required to basically walk the properties, in particular the lines of the property, and he's got this really neat software where he takes a photograph, posts it, and you can go back and look at pictures from the line, from the boundaries of the easements, and it was a really nice discussion. I appreciated it greatly. And there's continued discussion on the Conservation Commission about adding a position in discussion with Parks and Rec with respect to getting a steward to manage the natural resources list and things that need to be done on that. But that's in its planning stages, so nothing we need to talk about right now. I think that's it.
No committee action since last week.
Awesome. So there has been a request for a non-public session. Thank you, Kari. Good night. Thank you,
Thanks,
officer.
Kari.
Good night. For issues regarding
Thank
Good
you.
night.
pursuant to RSA 91:1:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D, E, and L.
Whitcomb, yes.
Gracias, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Thank you. We are in non-public session. Thank you, Nick.
We're
Can you let us know
adding-
we're off?
Adding
Oh,
Nance.
yeah. Do you want me to call her or do you want to call her? You better, because I'm not connected to this thing.